Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Azure Infrastructure as Code Live. Hope you all enjoyed last week's session if you were here, and this week we're going to have a look at some more Infrastructure as Code questions if we get any, and we're going to also have a look at how we can use Azure Resource Manager template specs. Have a play with this new feature, see how it works, and see what happens. And hi Rob in the chat, how are you today? I hope it's all going well. Okay, just give me a second, where did you get set up? So yeah, we're going to have a look at template specs today. As before, if you've got any questions on what I'm doing or any other questions just unrelated you want to ask, do drop them in the chat whenever you want and I will answer them as soon as possible. But in the meantime, we're going to have a look at using template specs. So if you've not seen them before, template specs are a new feature. They're in preview at the moment, which allow us to deal with the issue of how do you manage distributing templates, and in particular, how do you manage distributing templates when you're going to use them in linked templates. So for a long time, if you wanted to have somebody else run your templates, or in particular if you had linked templates where you wanted to call from one template to another, you needed those templates to be placed somewhere that was accessible to the person calling them, but also to the Azure Fabric so it could reach those particularly linked ones at runtime. So what you used to do was end up putting them either in an Azure storage account or into GitHub and making them public, or other storage locations. But yeah, it was a bit of a pain to deal with. You had to make sure they were all in the right place and so on. So template specs is an attempt by Microsoft to deal with that issue and to provide a way for you to basically store those templates in a place that you don't have to manage. Microsoft are managing the back end. And make them accessible to either other people or to your nested templates when you run them. So we're going to have a look at doing that today and how they actually work. So this is the documentation we're going to be following. If you want to have a look and follow along, then I will also put this link into the chat. In case anybody wants to have a look. And we're going to follow through this. So there's an explanation here about template specs and so on. We won't delve too into that. So first things first, we're going to need a template to actually call. So this is our template that's going to be put in template specs and will be our nested template or our resource module or whatever you want to do with that. So let's go ahead and create that. So I'll create a new file and we'll call it. We'll call it storage module. So this is giving you an example of basically recreating a reusable module for storage accounts. So let's say my company is going to be deploying Azure resources and I have a particular way that I want to deploy storage accounts. I want to turn on encryption and I want to add, I want to make sure I'm using HTTPS, and I mean, most of these are default, but let's have a look at how we can create a module that we're then going to distribute using template specs. So let's set this up as a template, and what I'm going to do first is we're going to actually add the storage account. If and when the snippets function decides to work. I have known that take a little while. It's not loaded the language server yet. It may very well. Oh, yeah, my Visual Studio Code has been doing this lately. I need to figure out what this is. For some reason, instead of giving me the list here, it's actually just giving me one row. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's have a look at that. Anyway, we're going to... This is very frustrating. I did see storage. There we go. On storage. Okay, so we're gonna create the storage account. Now we're gonna want some parameters. So let's create a couple of parameters. and say if you've got any questions either on this or anything else, just put them in the chat and I will be happy to answer them throughout the show. And let's also pass in the let's leave it at that for now. Let's just keep it simple. So we'll just replace this. Stick that on there as well. Okay, so this is creating a storage account. It's going to create a premium LRS storage account. So that's the type of storage account we are going to use. And we're going to require everyone to use. So that we've got this. This is just a plain old ARM template. There's nothing special about this. It's not doing anything in terms of template specs or anything like that at the minute. It's just a plain old ARM template. Okay. So what we need to now do is create a template spec. So this is what basically uploads it and adds it to Azure for us to then use. So we're going to need Azure PowerShell, and I wonder if I've got the right version. I didn't mention earlier, I think. Should be fairly easy to find out. We'll just see if we've got the template spec at hand. Did I do it chocolatey? I may very well have done, and I can't remember what the name is. What's the actual name? Where's Azure PowerShell? So we'll just update that. Oh, that's the wrong one. I always get that wrong. Oh. And we need to do it from admin command prompt. So this is going well. Okay, so let's just go ahead and upgrade that. That won't take very long. Now, has anyone in the chat used template specs yet? Anybody played with them before? Got any opinions on them? Any hints or tips on how you might work with them if you've already played about with them? Yeah, just checking what we need. Version 5 it should be. Or anybody got any use cases that they think template specs will be helpful for? Yeah, Robert. So that's what I was doing previously in my templates. So I've got a pipeline which basically pushes the templates into a storage account once I build them, and I have Azure DevOps pipeline to do that. And so yeah, that's what was doing previously. This basically allows us to do something similar, but instead of needing a pipeline, we can do it with one command, and I don't have to manage the storage account. So it's there is certainly benefits to doing that. All right, people spamming in chat already. We must be getting popular. So this hopefully would replace that, if we can figure out why we can't get working in PowerShell. It doesn't specifically say that you need the preview version. Let's just reload these. Try it with a CLI, see if that makes any difference. Azure dash CLI, because why be consistent? So Robert, you said this might not be suitable for all projects. It depends. I mean, it's basically just a generic storage location. So you can store your ARM templates using template specs. One thing I'm not sure of actually is whether you can actually permission them, so we can have a look at that. But it's basically you can basically upload and store any ARM template you want, give it a version number and so on, and you could use them whether there's things you want to put as a standard or whether they're actually part of a project. Now the issue obviously might be that I don't think there's any particular sort of hierarchy to these templates or anything. We'll have a look at that in a minute when we get them uploaded, if we ever get them uploaded. But yeah, you could use them, or using a storage account is still perfectly valid. Right. Do I need a preview version? No. So let's just see why it's not importing. Something not terribly happy with my PowerShell. I'm just going to reload the console. See if this actually works. Okay, apologies for this. Not sure why it is not working. But if you've got any other questions in the meantime while I struggle with PowerShell, please do shout and I will endeavour to answer them. Okay, let's just do it the old-fashioned way rather than using Chocolatey. Hopefully we will have a working CLI of one type or another. If not, what we can also do is probably do it from the portal. Actually, that might be one way we can do it. Yeah, so you can manage template specs through the Azure portal as well. So if we do it, if we go in here, we'll see if we can get the CLI working in a minute. But if we go into where I saved those, and we'll upload this file. Okay, now you need to store these template specs in a resource group, so they are an object. So we're going to create a template specs resource group that we use to store these, and we'll put them in West Europe. And you can version the template specs, and you can also add a description to them. So let's call it this. So you can see the template that we created. This is just the file we've uploaded, so nothing exciting there. You can tag them if you want to give them some more metadata, and then we'll go ahead and create them. He says that. Apparently I haven't given it a name. Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right, so we've got our template spec here. This is our storage template spec. There are a few things you can do with it. Now, one of the nice things you get with this, above and beyond a storage account, is that you can actually deploy them straight from the portal. So I can come in here and I can say I want a storage account, and it picks up my parameters that I've actually set in my template. I can give it a resource group. Let's do another one. So we can fill in the parameter. We'll go review and create. And looks like we have to agree to, well, not agree to it, but there is a marketplace terms and conditions. I guess they're covered by the marketplace agreement. We can create, and that should run that template spec. So if you were looking to, to have a UI, maybe a list of standard templates that you give to people who are wanting to create Azure resources, but who perhaps aren't familiar with ARM templates, you can use this as sort of a repository for actually storing those and creating resources with them. So that'll go ahead and deploy. You can make those templates as complicated as you want. Obviously, the parameters will be displayed, and this is now just a normal ARM deployment. So we should now have a resource group. What was it called? TS demos, wasn't it? There you go. Yep. And we should hopefully have a storage account in a minute. Caching probably hasn't shown it yet. He says. It wasn't there. I guess I just was impatient. There you go. So that's created that. So that's one way you can use those template specs. Probably the more useful one though is around actually how we use them as part of our nested templates. So if we go back to here, so yeah, if we've done it from the command line, we basically there's a new that's the PowerShell. So there's a new flag on the new AZ resource group deployment command, or for CLI the AZ deployment group command, called template spec ID, where you pass in the ID of the template spec. So that's the actual Azure resource ID, I believe. So if we come in here and look at the properties, you should see it in here. Yeah. So here's the actual resource ID. So you can grab that from there. Okay, but in terms of actually using them from our nested deployment, create template spec with limp templates. Yes, we'll come back to that one. So we want to deploy our template spec using a link template. So let's copy and paste this over here. It's not. Okay, we probably shouldn't have done that, given that it's not actually a complete deployment. Yeah, so we'll just grab this bit for the resources section and fill in the rest of it that way. So this is just a Microsoft Resources / deployments resource. This is the same resource you would use to do nested templates, if you were just calling them directly from a storage account or whatever. But in the template link section, what we're actually passing in is the ID of the template link, like we did with the other command. So we're going to tweak this a bit. So our version was 1.0. The name of the resource was storage. And the name of the resource group was TS Specs, was it? Specs. Now, in reality, we probably wouldn't hard code these. We would probably pass them in as parameters or something to this template. But for the purposes of a quick demo, we will do that. So this is basically just using the resource ID property to resolve this to the actual Azure resource ID. So you've got the resource group, you've got the type, you've got the name of the template spec, and then you've got the version that we created. Okay, and just clean up some of this. So we'll call this okay. Let's just check. That should be all right. Now, have any of these finished? Okay, good. So it's working from the command line now, so we can use the ASTS command to actually view them, and we can see we've got one template spec there, which is our storage spec. So we want to deploy it now. So all we should need to do, I believe, is just use the normal command. So I don't often deploy ARM templates with the Azure CLI. I normally use PowerShell, so let's just check the commands. So we resource group, use TS demo, and then we just need the template file. In the wrong folder. The template file is going to be our deploy nested file. So let's see if that works. No, we haven't set any of the parameters, have we? Which is not going to help. So back over here. The syntax for doing parameters with it. We'll just hard code that. Okay, that should work. One window. Too many windows open. Helps if I can spell. And that should go ahead and deploy our storage account. So you can see you can use those templates either directly as a sort of pseudo UI for creating resources using ARM templates, or you can use them, probably more people will use them for, is as a storage account replacement for where you're going to put your actual templates so they can be reached by other people from their ARM templates as a nested solution. Now the other bit, which I skipped over a minute ago but we'll go back to, is this. So you can also create template specs with linked templates. So you can have your template spec call another template. And that's quite nice because it should, in theory, we'll see in a minute, actually wrap up the all those templates together and deploy them all, well, upload them all and make them ready for use for you where they are. So you shouldn't have to worry about, you know, making sure that the paths all match and getting things in the right place or anything like that. So let's give that a go. So we're going to go and come back over here. And we'll go ahead and create this one. Let's see if this is finished. So yes, that should have created that storage account for me now. So if we hop on back to the portal, TS demo, we should have 2 storage accounts in here now. It's a bit slow. The Azure portal's been slow for me all day at work as well. I don't know if anyone else has seen it today. It's been pretty slow. But anyway, that's created that. So let's go back in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a template spec that we want to call that in itself is going to call the storage account nested template. So let's do that. So done it in here. Okay, so this is this is another slight change to the way the deployment resource. So let's copy that. So you can see here there's this new value as well called relative path, which allows you to point to that file. So in our case, it's together. Actually, let's do that. So I want to see how it deals with folders. Shouldn't be anything in there. So let's move the storage module in there, and we'll call it and let's see how that actually does it. Does it add some sort of folder structure? We'll see. So we're also then going to put something at the top level, and we're going to deploy a public IP address. And now what we also need is the parameter piece. And I'm going to create a parameter for this. So we can pass that in. And we're also going to create another one. And then we'll use that here. And do the same there. And there. Too many braces. I could probably have, haven't I? That seems all right. name as well. So we'll just call it that. Okay, that looks all right. Just format that. Okay, so that should now, in theory, create that for us. So we're going to go ahead and use the CLI this time. And we're going to check on the command I get from the CLI. Where is it? AZTS create. So let's just throw this in here. I'm just gonna, so we'll call this. Not really doing anything we'd actually do in real life, but that. And the template file is going to be nested.ts.json. I'm going to get rid of these because I've had issues in the past with running the CLI from PowerShell, not dealing with line endings like this particularly well. Okay, let's give this a go, shall we? Just check we're in the right folder. Yep. Okay, well, that seems to have worked. So if we go look back in the portal and we look at our template specs. Okay, so we've got our demo spec here, but no sign of the other one. Can I look at the actual content? Yeah, no sign. No sign of that additional one. Okay, well, let's have a look and see. Okay, so this is what returned from the Azure CLI when we ran the actual command to import it, and this does have our other template embedded in the template spec, so you can see the path there, the artifacts and so on, and then we've got our top level one. So let's see what shows up in here. Okay, well, we may as well test it. Let's go ahead and deploy this. And we'll create a new one just so we can see what's in there. Do that. Okay, that should be all we need. So it's going to create 2 resources. So let's see what it actually does. Now, I'm not sure how much I like that approach, because based on what we're seeing here, this demo spec has now got my nested template bundled within it, which is fine for this, but what if I... Yes, okay, so you can see it here. Yeah, so you can see that, but what if I wanted to use that from a different template spec? I guess it would create a copy of that within that one I upgraded as well. So you're now going to end up with multiple copies of that storage module. So if you need to change it, you're going to have to change it in multiple places and re-upload it, if I understand that correctly, which doesn't seem a great solution to me. But then again, I suppose if you wanted to reference it as a template spec, then you could do that directly in the nested templates. Actually, why don't we give that a try? Let's just check this worked. It did, so that seems to work, so we'll just get rid of that. So if we wanted to keep these sort of more this one, don't we? Yeah, if we wanted to make these, less bound together, then actually what we would want to do is this, I think. And let's up the version on that to replace it. And that should hopefully allow us to upload that now. So let's give that a go. Yeah, sorry, that's the version of that, isn't it? That's what we were interested in. We want to up the version here. So gamer, you I guess you're not necessarily know what we're doing. So what this stream was talking about is how we actually how we deploy resources to Microsoft Azure. So this is a bit of a technical stream looking at how we do that, and in particular we're looking here at a function called template specs. So if you're not familiar with clouds and Microsoft Azure, that might might all be a bit confusing. So that appears to have worked, I think, and I don't think we've got the nested one in there anymore, so let's go back over to our template specs. We've got that here. Yeah, so we've just got the main template here now, so let's just go ahead and deploy that and make sure that still works. Okay, so if that works, then that, I guess, resolves that problem. If you want to link, if you want to have nested template specs calling template specs, then you should be able to do that, which I think is better than hard coding those together because if you want to use that in more than one place, if obviously you're doing this for a specific project, and and you want to have that project all self-contained together, then that's not too bad. But yeah, if you want to make them reusable, then I would suggest you split those up. Okay, and it looks like it's not got a. It says it's done the storage account, so maybe we'll just wait. There we go. Okay, waiting for it to finish caching. Yeah, so that worked as well. So anyone got any questions on that? Anything you want to dig into some more, or anything you want to talk about in particular, or if you've got questions on other infrastructure as code stuff that you just want to bring up, please drop them in the chat now. Yeah, there's not really much else to it. They seem to work pretty well. So I think, Rob, you asked earlier really about whether or not this would replace putting things into storage accounts. So I think it depends is my answer. You can probably build some pipelines like we did with the storage accounts. You can probably build a pipeline to publish these specs, in the same way. So when you keep them in your Git repo, check them in there, and when they're done, test them, push them out to template specs. It has some benefits there, even if above and beyond the storage account, because you're not having to manage the storage account, you don't have to back it up. But also you have got that UI in the portal that you can give access to. And by the looks of it, we didn't actually check this, but it looks like we should be able to permission those template specs as well. So yeah, so we can look at the template specs. Is there any specific roles in here? I guess maybe you just need to be a reader. I have to see whether that actually works. If you block someone's permissions, whether they can read them still or not. Okay, a couple of questions, Dave. So you, if you can use resource ID function to address your template, presume this work cross subscriptions as long as you had the rights. Yeah, I would imagine it would. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't. Again, you're going to have the rights to get them. Yeah, I can't see any reason why it wouldn't work. If we got time in a minute, I could probably test that out. I've got another subscription in here, so we could try that. And Robert, you said so. TS allows you to designate a place for templates. Yeah, so it has it gives you a place to upload those templates that isn't a storage account or a GitHub repo. Obviously, the issue with GitHub repos is you had to make them public, which was always a pain if they were sensitive or had IP in them. So you can avoid needing to use that and still make them available to your organization. You can apply RBAC to them by the looks of it. So that's a benefit by itself, just by being able to have a more controllable place to put them. You've got some of the benefits there. If you do want to use linked templates and have it upload them for you, that will work. If you want to reference other template specs, you can do that in a bit of a simpler way. And then you've got the added benefit, if you want to use it, of having the portal on top, allowing you to provide a UI to people if they want to deploy them, if that's something you're interested in. I mean, it may not be. It may, if you do all your deployments using the CLI or pipelines or something, then it might not be. But it could be of use. So yeah, Dave, let's just have a quick look and see if we can do that cross subscription. So resource groups. I've got another sub in here, I think. Yes. So let's go look at this one. Add another resource group. Yeah, that's a good idea, Dave. So yeah, if you're using Lighthouse to manage a customer sub, then you could keep all your template specs in a sub that you control, that's owned by you, and then use them to deploy to your client subs via Lighthouse. Yeah, in theory that should work. Um, let's give it a go though. Let's see that. So we want to do that. Let's do that. Okay, so now if we're going to deploy, we'll use this nested TS, deploy nested even. We'll just do this one to keep it simple. So we're going to need to add the subscription ID, which I should still have. Yeah, and do that. Change that just for the sake of it. Right, so what do I call that resource group? Sub TS. I mean, S is still ridiculous. Okay. I've messed something up. This one. Yeah, it looks all right. I think. I mean, its case is different, and we've still got it is version 1.0, isn't it? Version 1.0, yeah. So we actually want that one. Yeah, that looks correct apart from the case. I don't think that's going to make a great deal of difference, but let's just check. You never know. Okay, that's a little disappointing. Doesn't seem to work, but maybe I'm doing something wrong. See if there's anything in the issues. That shouldn't matter because that error was about using using the subscription scope, which we're not doing here. Let's just cheat and hard code this just in case. No. Okay, so it doesn't look like it works at the subscription, a different subscription at the minute, which is disappointing. I would have thought it would. Let's try doing it without the template. So if we just do okay, so that seems to work. So if you call the template spec directly across subscription, that seems to be working here. So it's something with the actual nested ARM template here. Now obviously what we could do is we could set the subscription property here, but we shouldn't have to do that. You can set the subscription property here to have this deployed to a different subscription to what you run the deployment against, and then use this, log onto that subscription and the CLI, but that shouldn't be necessary. Yeah, I think I'll have to dig into why that doesn't work like this, but the fact that it works here, let's just check it's actually deployed the resources. But where were we? Cross sub tiers, yeah. There you go. Yeah, so that works. So it has created the resource. So it works there. So the fact that it does that would imply to me that the nested template should actually work. I'm not sure why it's not working, but I'll try and dig into that and I'll post a solution on Twitter or on my blog. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Okay. Well, we're just about out of time today. We're up to the hour. If anyone's got any last minute questions or anything they want to raise before the end of the hour, or is anyone got any suggestions about what they'd like us to look at in the next stream? Happy to take some suggestions. One thing I've got on the list potentially to look at next week is we'll look at a bit of Pulumi. So Pulumi have recently released the automation API for .NET, which I was waiting for. Most of my Pulumi code I write is in C#. So I was going to give that one a go and play about with using the automation API to create self-contained Pulumi deployment programs. But if people have got something else they'd like to see, more than happy to have a look at that. Just put something in the chat, or if you've got any questions you'd like to ask before the end of the stream, again, stick them in now and I will get to them. Otherwise, we will pick up again next week. Clean up some of my resource groups. I'm not paying for this storage. No problem, Dave. Glad you found that interesting. Sorry we had to mess about a bit with PowerShell at the beginning, but we got there in the end. So Dave, you were asking about Bicep. What are my thoughts? Yeah, so Bicep's an interesting one, and if people want to do a session on that, I'm more than happy to do that. If you actually look back at the Christmas stream I did, there's some stuff on there. But in terms of my thoughts on Bicep, yeah, it's interesting. I like it. I think it is a nicer language than ARM. I think it makes it a bit easier to write templates. It's very much aimed at people who are coming to ARM new, really. If you're familiar, if you're happy with using ARM today, and and you're comfortable with the language and all those sort of things, then there is very limited value, at least at the moment, in terms of migrating to that. But if you're coming to Azure for the first time, and particularly coming to ARM for the first time, it can be a real big barrier to entry to getting to grips with ARM templates if you've never used that sort of language before. I don't know about you, but when I first started with Azure, that was my first real introduction to infrastructure as code and declarative languages, and so the JSON complexity of ARM templates, it took a while to get used to. So I know, having talked to the ARM team, their aim is really to get reduce the friction for people coming new to this. So that's where it's aimed, and that's where it's going to have the most benefit. So if you're happy with that, or if you're using another language, it's certainly not going to tempt you away from the Terraform or the Plumbers of the world either. But that's not what it's intended for. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think I like it as a language. If I was going to be writing ARM templates from scratch today, I probably would write them in Bicep. I'm not sure I'd go back and convert existing ones, but yeah, it's a good language. There are some abstractions in there, particularly around the module piece, which obviously under the hood it's just nested templates, but it makes it a bit it feels like a module concept rather than just joining templates together. So yeah, I think Bicep is a good way forward, especially for people who are new. But yeah, at the minute there's not massive temptations in there for people who are happy with what they've got. But I know there are plans to introduce more things to the language, which hopefully will make people more interested as time goes on. But yeah, happy to talk more about Bicep if people are interested in the future. Okay, well, any last questions, stick them in the chat now. Otherwise, I'll be back again next week. So that'll be Tuesday, the 2nd of March at 7 p.m. We'll do another hour. And I say we'll probably have a look at using Pulumi and the automation API. If you're not familiar with it, Pulumi is a relatively new infrastructure as code tool that you can basically write your infrastructure as code in real programming languages. So C#, TypeScript, Python, those sort of things. And they've just released an automation API. So it's been out in Python and TypeScript thing for a while now, but they just released it for .NET. And what this will allow you to do is to take your C#, or in my case C# infrastructure as code tools. At the minute when you deploy them, you use the Pulumi CLI to deploy them, but because it's just a .NET, it's just a .NET project, you can actually build a DLL and then execute that like an application. And so it brings up some great possibilities for automation. So we'll have a look at that next week. It's fairly complicated, so we might take us more than an hour. We might have to do it in a couple of sessions, but we'll have a look at that. Okay, well, thanks everyone today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions or anything you want answering before the next stream, just pop them on Twitter. You can get me at Sam Cogan, or have a look at my blog, samcogan.com. And I hope you have a great rest of the evening, and I will see you next week.